That way you guys get to know who your presenter is. So again, my name is Gabrielle Jenkins. I have a super big passion for advocating for those who can advocate for themselves and mainly speaking out for the rights of humans. And recently I have begun to start working with youth, and that is a super big population that I am super blessed to be able to help with because in my personal experiences, youth are the main population that are not being serviced and are not being supported until it is too late. And that's just something I'm extremely passionate about. Some other activities that I love to do in my free time, I've been more so recently getting into wanting to do Pilates. It's amazing because it incorporates strength training, yoga, all of those amazing good things. And it's honestly a quick workout. So I've been into doing that. I love to do my makeup and get dressed up. And more than ever, I have been trying to focus on prioritizing my mental health. So ever since I have now been in college, between having to work full time, attending college full time, it has been a lot, honestly, on my mental health. And so I try to keep work at work and home life at home. That way I can learn how to separate the two. And so that's something that I love doing more recently. And then in these other pictures, here's some of my other hobbies. So in high school, I played volleyball all 4 years. And then I have more been trying to get into like the more outdoors events and things like that. So in this picture right here, I went skiing for the first time last year and I snowboarded in December. So I have been getting more into learning how to snowboard. So that is who I am. Okay. And then a little bit more on my professional background, that way you all can kind of know that. So I am the Youth Services Coordinator at Kingdom Builders Family Life Center. And we are an organization that is committed to changing the narrative for BIPOC individuals, men, young adults, and children in marginalized communities who have been historically impacted by domestic violence and sexual violence. In my role, I lead our youth department program, which is called Project Right Direction. And in Project Right Direction, we focus heavily on youth violence and interruption. And before we dive into the critical topic of teen dating violence and its impact on African American teens, I am going to go ahead and share a quick story and the driving force behind my commitment to speaking out on this issue. So, as we all know, adolescence is a vulnerable period marked by tremendous growth and exploration. Yet, it's also a time when many young people unfortunately fall through the cracks, not receiving the help and intervention until they desperately need it. And so this belief, honestly, is my complete driving force to advocate for our youth to be able to get assistance and support and help just as much as it's important for our adults to get help. It's so important for our teens and our youth because they are the silent victims. You know, they see it happening and they don't get the help, honestly, until they get older. So right now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is kind of share my testimony just to be a little bit more vulnerable here. So when I was 15 years old, I entered my first serious relationship as a high school freshman. Initially, everything seemed amazing. All of my friends, everybody, I thought it was the best treated girl in the world, honestly. But as months went on, things started to get progressively worse. And especially during COVID-19, everything, especially during that time, just got really bad. My partner, my ex-boyfriend, he would get extremely jealous. He would always accuse me of cheating on him. He was very controlling. And even if I would leave the house without telling him where I was going, he would get extremely angry. His jealousy unfortunately led to confrontation with my friends. There was this one incident where I was at school and we both shared a guy friend, and this guy friend gave me a hug. My ex and I at the time were arguing. He did not like that my friend gave me a hug. So he went to the parking lot and he confronted him and he literally tried to fight him. This is right after school, so everybody was there. He was going off on him. Our resource officers had to get in and step in, or else it would have gotten very physical. So he would do those very dramatic events to basically try to draw attention to me. That just didn't feel good. Some other instances where he was extremely controlling is I have my best friend, she's still my best friend to this day, but my best friend and I have known each other since the fourth grade. So I don't know how old that is, about maybe 8 or so. So we've known each other for a really long time. Now, my ex-boyfriend did not like my best friend for whatever reason. And all three of us shared a class. Every morning he would come in, he wouldn't acknowledge her, he would roll his eyes, he would just be extremely rude. He would say rude comments. And there was this one situation where she confronted him and she said, "Hey, I have absolutely no reason why you are so mean to me. I've done nothing wrong to you." And he went off on her. He cussed at her. He called her out of her name. And my best friend was crying to me for me to step in and, defend her. But at the time, I was obsessed with this boy. I loved him. I thought he's going to be my husband. And I didn't step up for her. And our friendship kind of shifted from that point. Thankfully, after getting out of that relationship, we were able to kind of work on our friendship. But those are just some of the many different things that he would do. He would really try to isolate me. And I was torn between my friendship with my friends and then also my relationship with him. And so, as he lashed out to those closest to me, including my best friends, with hurtful words and actions, looking back now, I definitely realized that that was emotional abuse that was present throughout our relationship. But at the time, I was too deeply invested to care clearly. And again, being able to break free from that toxic relationship was honestly one of the most challenging experiences of my life that I've had to experience. It meant rebuilding relationships with friends I'd grown distant from and rediscovering my own sense of worth and identity outside of that damaging dynamic. And it's honestly a journey I wouldn't want to wish on anyone. And that is why I'm driven to educate and empower our young people to recognize and avoid what I had encountered. My motivation stems not only from my personal experience, but also from witnessing my own mother's journey. My mom, she experienced domestic violence at a very young age. She married her abuser at 19 and she went on to have two kids with him. And so, because of having kids, that was more of a reason for her to stay in the marriage. And she endured physical violence while in her relationship before leaving, before finding the strength to leave. And while I understood domestic violence growing up, because my mom is the founder and CEO of advocating for those who have been impacted by domestic violence, it wasn't until I had my own situation that I actually realized truly what domestic violence was and how much emotional abuse is not talked about. And as we go on our discussion today, I ask all of you to join me in the mission to equipping our youth to learn knowledge and resources they need to advocate their relationships safely and confidently. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to share my story. I am going to go ahead now and move on and talk about our agenda that I will be discussing today. So as you know, we already talked about, I went ahead and I shared my testimony and my motivation for why I drive to speak out about teen dating violence. Now, we will go ahead and move on and start talking about understanding exactly what teen dating violence is, the cultural factors that play into why it is so important to be culturally competent when working with African American teens, and what impact that domestic violence can have on our African American teens. And then I do have a couple of slides that I would love to talk about with our prevention and intervention and what are some different ways that we can all incorporate into our practice. And then lastly, I have our community engagement where I will talk about what are some local businesses in Colorado that do help African Americans. And so before we get moving on to actually understanding what teen dating violence is, I have a question that I would like to hear responses from everyone on. If we can get that posted in the chat.
This is Sierra. Everyone, Kathy just shared the question in the chat. So how many of you have experienced or know someone affected by teen dating violence during your younger years? So feel free to share those responses in the chat. Again, you're more than welcome to unmute and share with the group out loud. Would love to start seeing and hearing some of those responses come in.
Good morning. I wanted to comment on the question. I'm Lisa Jenkins with Kingdom Builders. And so as Gabby mentioned earlier, I was in my first marriage at 19, but I started seeing, so I was 19 years old. And so I think that's where, but before that, I used to see during the time in the 80s, I started high school. And so I think it was a big notice growing up in New York, where there was a lot of teen violence during my younger years, witnessing it. Never thought that I would be in one myself, but then I was. So it was a lot of that back then.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Would anybody else like to? I see a couple of answers inside the chat box. I have as well. I have a hand. I have my best friend. She would not listen to her close friends about what was happening to her. She married him, he cheated on her, and they are now divorced. Yeah, thank you guys so much for sharing. Yes, my ex-boyfriend in high school had a lot of anger issues. He always accused me of cheating on him and got very jealous when talking to other people. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay. Well, you guys feel free to go ahead and reply in the chat box. I will see that while continuing to talk, but for now, we're going to go ahead and move on. And so let's see here. Okay. Awesome. So now we're going to go ahead and talk about a crucial topic that affects so many young individuals, teen dating violence. Often when we all hear the word violence, what happens, right? Our minds automatically jump to physical altercations. However, teen dating violence encompasses a range of abusive behaviors beyond just physical harm. Let's explore what exactly teen dating violence entails and how can we better understand it. So right here, we have the definition of teen dating violence. And teen dating violence refers to abusive behaviors within a dating relationship among adolescents or teenagers. It includes physical, sexual, psychological, and digital abuse, which is becoming so common in our world today. Teen dating violence, again, is not limited to physical violence, but also includes emotional manipulation, coercion, and control. And with teen dating violence, repeated texting to threaten, stalk someone, and or posting sexual photos online without the consent of the partner are actions that also unfortunately fall under the umbrella of teen dating violence. And this is something that I love to stress on a lot of my youth about. It can occur in both heterosexual and same-sex relationships, and it can involve individuals of any gender identity or sexual orientation. So physical violence, again, this is the main thing that jumps to everybody's mind when we start talking about what teen dating violence is. And by definition, teen dating violence involves any intentional use of physical force with the intent to cause harm, such as hitting, punching, or kicking. And according to a study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, approximately 9% of high school students reported experiencing physical dating violence in the last year. And this report was done in 2020, so I expect that the numbers have raised since then. But I'm a numbers person, and I like to kind of put this into perspective for everyone, that way you all can imagine it. So let's say a general high school has about 1,200 students, right? If we are using 9% of the 1,200 students, unfortunately, 108 of those students are going to be in a physically violent relationship. And while again, 9% may not seem like a huge number, when you put it into perspective, 108, you are more than likely going to know at least one person who is going to be a silent victim of physical violence. And then we have sexual violence, which tends to be the second most common thing that is talked about. And by definition, again, physical violence is any non-consensual sexual activity within a dating relationship, including rape, unwanted sexual touching, or pressure to engage in sexual acts. And here's another statistic. According to the same exact study, approximately 7% of high school students reported being forced to have sexual intercourse against their will by a dating partner. And again, this is done in 2020. So putting it into perspective, again, 7% of 1,200 students is going to be 84 students who are unfortunately going to be in a sexually violent dating relationship. And the reason why I'm kind of surprised that this number is not a little bit higher, but again, this is done in 2020. And speaking from my own experience, there is a super huge common norm that is done when freshmen are first entering into high school. You're known as the freshman meet. You're known as the seniors that are in high school are going to be wanting to date you only for the purpose of your body. And so that is a huge thing that continues to be super prevalent in our society today. And then we have our psychological and our emotional abuse. And this is any behavior that aims to control, manipulate, or demean the partner emotionally, including verbal insults, threats, or isolation from friends and family. And the Youth Risk Behavior Survey conducted a survey and revealed that 15% of high school students reported being electronically bullied by a dating partner in the past year. And this report was done in 2018. So some signs that you can be able to look at for your teens that you are working with or any other youth who you may know. Some major signs that you can tell if someone is in an emotionally abusive relationship is one, gaslighting. And gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where the abuser makes the victim doubt their perception, memory, or sanity. This often involves denying the victim's experiences or feelings, pretty much ignoring their concerns or manipulating facts to make the victim question their reality. And an example that an abuser might do if someone is being gaslit is repeatedly telling their partner, "You're just imagining things," when the partner expresses concern about the abuser's behavior or actions. The next thing that is super common, and it happens a lot, and happened to myself, is isolating you from loved ones. This involves the abuser intentionally cutting off the victim from their friends, family, or support system, isolating them emotionally and socially to maintain control over them. An example of emotional abuse is an abuser might discourage their partner from spending time with friends or family, making them feel guilty for wanting to see loved ones or creating conflicts whenever they try to maintain relationships outside of the abusive relationship. And then we have insulting language, and this is a huge one as well. And insulting language, the abuser uses derogatory or demeaning language to undermine the victim's self-esteem and confidence, eroding their sense of self-worth. And an example, if somebody is using derogatory words and really insulting words, is an abuser might call their partner, make hurtful remarks about their appearance, their intelligence, or abilities, or constantly criticize and belittle them in public and private settings. And the next one is yelling. Yelling or shouting is a form of verbal abuse, where the abuser raises their voice to intimidate, dominate, or control the victim, creating an atmosphere of fear and anxiety. An example could be during an argument, the abuser raises their voice, shouts insults, or uses aggressive language to intimidate the victim and make them feel small or powerless. And then we have shifting the blame. The abuser refuses to take responsibility for their actions or mistakes, instead blaming the victim for creating problems. And a huge one is after a verbal altercation. The abuser might say, "You made me yell at you because you never listened to me," shifting the blame to the victim and deflecting accountability for their aggressive behavior. And now these are just examples to illustrate how behavior manifests in an abusive relationship, contributing to a pattern of control, manipulation, and emotional harm inflicted by the abuser onto the victim. And although emotionally abusive people set out to purposely hurt their victims, they often minimize their role and blame the victim for the abuse. Those like common things such as "she made me do it" or "he should have known not to talk to me when I was in that kind of mood." Abusers often claim they have no control over their abusive behaviors. And then we have our last one, which is becoming super popular, as I've been mentioning this entire time, and we have digital abuse. And digital abuse refers to using technology such as social media, texting, or online platforms to control, harass, or intimidate a partner. And according to a study conducted by the Urban Institute, 26% of teens in a romantic relationship reported experiencing some form of digital abuse by their partner. such as the partner may monitor their social media accounts or using technology to track their whereabouts. And in recent years, there have been an increasing recognition of digital abuse as a prevalent form of teen dating violence. It has been argued that youth of a certain sex may use behaviors more typical than of the opposite sex when dealing with conflicts in a relationship. And I did find a research article to kind of try to back up my points here. And it was noted that research findings support this notion. Males were significantly more likely to have experienced digital dating abuse by a 32.3% compared to females 23.6%. However, males were more likely to experience all types of digital dating abuse, including physical aggression. And now you may be asking, okay, what is the link between digital dating abuse and offline dating abuse? And there is a significant connection that I can mention. The vast majority of students who have been abused online have also been abused offline. Specifically, 81% of the students who had been the target of digital dating abuse had also been the target of traditional dating abuse, such as being pushed, grabbed, or threatened. And students offline were approximately 18 times more likely to have experienced online abuse compared to those who were not victimized offline. And so this right here highlights the importance of addressing both digital and traditional forms of dating abuse. To be able to effectively support and protect our youth in our relationships, it is important to know the more about digital dating abuse because, again, almost every single youth now, even ones that are just being born, are growing up on technology, and it continues to evolve honestly every single day. And so by understanding the various forms of dating violence, it is crucial in addressing this pervasive issue because it enables us to recognize the warning signs and patterns of abusive behavior. By educating ourselves and others about the different forms of teen dating violence, including emotional, physical, and verbal abuse, we can better identify when someone is experiencing abuse in their relationship. And so now, understanding the complexity of teen dating violence, it helps us to break the silence and stigma surrounding the issue. By shedding light on the different ways in which abuse can manifest, we can create a supportive environment where survivors feel validated and encouraged to seek help. This increased awareness also facilitates conversations about healthy relationships and consent, equipping our youth with knowing the knowledge and tools to recognize and prevent abusive behaviors in their own. And so before I move on to our next topic, does anyone have any questions or would like to share anything?
Gabby, this is Sierra. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, but encourage all of you to continue to share anything you would like to, and I'll share those things as they share, Gabby.
Awesome, thank you. Okay.
I have something again.
Yes.
I am thank you for sharing those statistics, Gabby. With as a parent of, I guess I have three different generations of children. I have some that are adults now, and then we have the young adults, and then now we have 8-year-old boys. As a parent, it's mind-boggling to know how to be able to keep up with or to be able to support your youth on the journey. But as what would you suggest as when you start getting to those pre-teenage years where they don't really want to talk much? How can we support our youth better in getting them to open up if they're having any challenges that would come to this teen dating violence? What would be your recommendation as a for a parent?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question. Thank you so much for asking. So a important thing I would suggest that you can do for your younger ones, definitely, is being able to understand that social media is a huge thing that is a part of now our generation. And so a lot of times, I'll kind of answer your question while I'm talking about other stuff, but a lot of times when a child is in trouble or whatever it is, the parent decides to remove the phone. And now that is what makes up our generation now is their phone. So what I would suggest before they continue getting to that age is letting them know, and like I do in my own leadership class, we go over what consent is. You know, if somebody is texting you, especially online, hey, can you send me nudes? Hey, can you send me your body? You know, that's anybody, nobody should be asking you that question. And so just being able to teach them what are some boundaries, what is the way that I can safely say no without the other person getting mad at me if I don't want to upset them. How can I safely consent to this? Because we all know that that is a huge thing that I feel like is not talked about a lot. So, you know, how can I consent to this? And then also just letting them know that there are people that they can talk to, because what I find a lot of times too, kids are not going to disclose if they are having an issue on social media, on their phones, with somebody that's related to them, such as their parent, their older siblings. They're just not going to do it because they don't want any judgment. But letting them know that if you are experiencing some issues and you would like to talk about it, I could definitely get you into the right direction. But that's what I would suggest, is kind of teaching them about consent, boundaries, and just social media in general. This, because like I said, it's becoming so prevalent in our community today, and I wish I had a more better answer to help you answer that. But that's what I would suggest now, is the more of the education piece, because that's super important right now, is the intervention before it gets to that point where now we're becoming an issue. How can we get you some services? So definitely education is super important.
That helps. Thank you. And I'm also looking at the space of, thank you earlier for sharing your testimony. Yet as a mother, hearing that, it broke my heart, because as parents, we sometimes see the signs of a partner that may not be as great, but I think that allowing a child to experience some things, because we can't avoid it, especially if they're in a relationship, but we can only be there to support and letting them know that, you know, of course, educating on this is not okay, this is not safe, but giving them that space to make the decision like you were able to do, rather than me saying, okay, I'm going to refuse 100% that you can't date this person anymore. And then, of course, run the risk of you going behind our backs as parents. So that's just kind of something I wanted to say, because I did hear your story earlier, and it was I knew the person was not the right person for you, but I didn't know the insides of some of the challenges you were facing. And I wish that I did. But again, I'm glad you were able to make the decision based on your knowledge and knowing that that was not okay. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And absolutely, just like I tell even some of our teens now who are currently in a teen dating violence relationship, is whenever you are here to talk, let me know. But I feel like a lot of the times when you're in a violent relationship, you know it's not okay. It's more of the, how am I going to live without this person? Who am I going to talk to? Because you've already broken all my friendships I have. And so just letting them know that you are there and you are ready for them to open their ear to you whenever they get to that point is the most important thing. Just giving them that space to kind of experience it, definitely. But thank you. And so, see, okay. And so now we're going to go ahead and begin talking about the risk factors of teen dating violence. And so being able to identify risk factors for teen dating violence is essential in understanding and addressing the prevalence of this issue. Risk factors are characteristics or circumstances that increase the likelihood of someone experiencing dating violence in their relationship. By being able to recognize these risk factors, we can also be able to help better identify individuals who may be at a heightened risk and intervene early to prevent or address teen dating violence. And so the main thing that we have up here is if a youth has experienced stressful events such as trauma, including a past history of sexual abuse or prior sexual victimization, they are at a higher risk of becoming victims of teen dating violence. And it's important to recognize the impact of trauma on their vulnerability and provide appropriate support and resources. And then we have exposure to community or neighborhood violence. So those teens who are exposed to community or neighborhood violence are more susceptible to teen dating violence. Witnessing violence in their environment can normalize aggressive behaviors and affect their perceptions of healthy relationships. And then we have engagement in risky behavior. So youth who engage in risky behaviors such as substance abuse, alcohol use, or violence are at an increased risk of experiencing teen dating violence. And these behaviors may contribute to a cycle of violence and exhibit existing vulnerabilities already. And then we have the early dating. So starting to date at an early age can heighten vulnerability to teen dating violence. The lack of experience and maturity in navigating relationships may make them more susceptible to unhealthy dynamics. And then we have early sexual activity. So participation in sexual activity prior to age 16 is also a risk for teen dating violence. Premature sexual activity can include and increase vulnerability or manipulation within relationships. And while these risk factors aren't determinative of future experiences of teen dating violence, they definitely provide valuable insight when working with vulnerable youth. And by understanding and addressing these risk factors, we can better support and protect our youth who have been impacted by teen dating violence. And now that we have kind of really gone over exactly what teen dating violence is and the risk factors of it, we are going to go ahead and move on to another crucial topic, which is cultural factors. Understanding cultural text is essential when addressing the needs of specific populations experiencing trauma. Okay. And now we have our cultural roles that we are going to go ahead and get started talking about. So in the African American community, cultural relationship norms carry significant weight in shaping the experiences of teens growing up. For instance, traditional gender roles may indicate expectations regarding power dynamics within our relationships. There also may be a pressure on young men to display dominance and control, while young women may feel compelled to prioritize their partner's needs and desires. And these norms can perpetuate unhealthy relationship dynamics, making it crucial to address them in any discussion about teen dating violence. And when navigating the complexities of teen dating violence within the African American community, it is imperative to consider these cultural factors. By recognizing and addressing the cultural norms and values at play, we can develop more effective strategies to support and empower our youth in building healthy, respectful relationships. So I'm going to take a quick sip of water. Does anybody have any questions while I'm talking? Awesome. So again, feel free to share if you guys have anything throughout. That's perfectly fine. Or if you want to unmute and talk, I like that as well. And so societal stereotypes play a significant role in shaping our perceptions and responses to teen dating violence within the African American community. The strong Black woman stereotype often discourages violence within the African American community. It discourages victims, particularly women, from seeking help or speaking out about their experiencing due to appearing vulnerable. And then we have the angry Black man stereotype. And this can lead to victim blaming attitudes and minimize the experience of African American men as victims of dating violence. And then we have right here the thug stereotype. And the thug stereotype hinders anybody's ability to seek help or be taken seriously as victims, contributing to assumptions of guilt or aggression in relationships. And then we have the broken family stereotype. And this right here perpetuates misconceptions about the prevalence or acceptance of dating violence within African American families, resulting in underreporting and a lack of support. And then we have the hypersexualization stereotype of both African American men and women. This can lead to harmful assumptions about sexual behavior and relationship dynamics, further contributing to victim blaming attitudes. Finally, we have the cultural tolerance stereotype, and this may mistakenly suggest that certain forms of dating violence are culturally accepted, leading to underreporting of abusive behaviors. And so by addressing these stereotypes, they are very crucial in creating a supportive and safe space where victims of teen dating violence can feel empowered to seek help and access the resources that they need for their safety and healing. And the impact that historical trauma has on Black teens experiencing teen dating violence is a huge issue that is mainly rooted in the enduring effects of systematic racism, historical trauma that exhibits the challenges faced by Black teens. And this ultimately can leave our teens feeling powerless, having been isolated, and hopelessness are just some things that they typically experience. And while the Black communities have developed cultural resilience and coping mechanisms, this can unfortunately sometimes lead to reinforcement of silence or stigma around issues such as teen dating violence. And this hinders help-seeking behaviors. And then we have our intergenerational trauma transmission within our families and communities. And this definitely can influence how Black teens perceive and respond to violence in their relationships. The mental health outcomes of historical trauma included heightened stress, anxiety, and depression further exhibit the effects of teen dating violence. And these barriers to help seeking can sometimes create a distrust of institutions and create a limited access to culturally competent services that unfortunately can prolong their experiences. And so addressing the impact of historical trauma, it definitely requires a trauma-informed approach that acknowledges the unique historical and cultural context that African American teens experience. And by being able to foster resilience, promoting healing within their cultural identity, and addressing systematic racism to support them in overcoming the intersecting effects of historical trauma, this can ultimately lead to more teens being able to get the healing that they need. Now, a huge question that you may be wondering now is, how can I become more culturally competent after hearing about systematic racism, you know? And that's a great question to ask and kind of wonder. So now we're gonna go ahead and really deeply explain what culturally competence entails. So culturally competence is not merely about ticking boxes or learning a few facts about different cultures. It's about embodying a mindset of understanding, respect, and effective expectations regarding power dynamics within relationships. This means cultivating ongoing self-awareness, acknowledging our own biases that we may have in life and assumptions, and committing to always wanting to continuously learn and grow from our mistakes. It requires us to recognize that we don't have all the answers and just being open to learning from the experiences and perspectives of others. Culturally competence also involves the ability to adapt interventions and approaches to reflect the cultural values and beliefs of those we work with. It's about meeting people where they are, acknowledging and valuing their unique cultural backgrounds and integrating cultural considerations into our practice. And just being able to empower through representation is super important. Research shows that Black teens are more likely to feel understood and supported when working with professionals who share their cultural background or possess knowledge about Black culture. This representation not only fosters trust and rapport, but also validates their experiences, leading to a more positive and effective support journey. And remember this, it is okay if you feel that a particular issue or situation is not within your expertise or comfort zone. It's perfectly acceptable to refer your guests to another agency or organization better equipped to assist them. And being able to recognize your strengths and limitations and prioritize the well-being and needs of those you serve above all else is so important. And think about it this way. We all tend to gravitate toward those who we feel like we can relate to or understand our experiences. And this is universal and it's perfectly fine to feel this way or if your guest at any point acknowledges, hey, I would rather work with someone that looks like me, not getting upset by it, because universally we all are like this and kind of have our own bias to this. And by acknowledging and embracing this reality, we can create a more inclusive and supportive environment for all of us. As we move forward, let's commit to fostering cultural competence in our practice, embracing diversity, and ensuring that every individual feels respected, understood, and empowered on their journey to healing and resilience. And so now that we all have a better understanding of how cultural factors can hinder African American teens, we are going to dive into this demographic that talks a little bit more on teen dating violence in the African American community. So let's go ahead and consider this powerful statistic that says nearly 1 in 3 African American teens experience physical, emotional, or verbal abuse in dating relationships. This alarming statistic highlights the urgent need for increased awareness and action. Teen dating violence is unfortunately a pressing issue that is often overlooked, particularly within the African American community. This community is already marginalized in so many ways, lacks the necessary support and resources to address teen dating violence. And as a result, many African American teens do not receive the help they need until it is too late. And it is very imperative that we shine a spotlight on this issue and work towards creating a safer and more supportive environment. And this high number can be attributed to a multitude of many different factors. Firstly, the main thing that I will touch on will be the intersectionality of identities, including race, gender, and socioeconomic status. This creates compounded vulnerabilities for African American teens, increasing their risk of experiencing dating violence. And then we have historical trauma, which stems from systematic racism, socioeconomic disparities, and cultural norms within the African community. And this can create environments where violence is more prevalent and normalized. And then we have barriers to help seeking, which is honestly due to the unfortunate side of distrust in our institutions and cultural stigma surrounding mental health, further hindering African American teens from accessing support services. And then we have underreporting, which is due to stigma and lack of awareness about healthy relationships, also plays a role in inflating this statistic. And as we all know, mental health is essential for everyone, yet people of color often face unique challenges in seeking help. Cultural stigma and systematic racism can create significant barriers to accessing mental health support, leading many individuals to seek alternative healing methods instead of traditional therapy. And for African American teens seeking mental health support, this can be especially challenging. Growing up, therapy is not an openly discussed topic within our community. And there's also a cultural stigma surrounding mental health. You know, you will hear things and people will say things like, you're crazy, there's nothing wrong with you, all you need is the Lord, and you can figure this out yourself. And this stigma also being compounded by systematic racism can deter teens from reaching out for help, even when experiencing the psychological effects of teen dating violence. And according to the American Psychiatric Association, African American teens are 20%. African American teens are less likely to seek mental health treatment compared to their peers, with only 20% receiving needed care. And this right here speaks for itself. We, of course, just need to be a lot more competent, especially in our mental health practices, and just overall. This statistic right here, it is very low, but historically, people of color, especially in the African American community, we are underreporting. And I will explain a little bit more later on why underreporting is super big. But let's consider the story of Marcus, a teenage African American boy who was in an abusive relationship. So Jamal, a 16-year-old African American teen, was in a relationship with his girlfriend Maya for over a year. At first, everything seemed perfect, but as time went on, Maya became increasingly controlling and verbally abusive towards Jamal. She would constantly criticize him, isolate him from his friends, and demand to know his whereabouts at all times. Despite feeling unhappy and trapped in the relationship, Jamal was hesitant to seek help or confide in anyone about his struggles. Growing up in a community where mental health was rarely discussed and seeking help was seen as a sign of weakness, Jamal felt ashamed and embarrassed to admit that he was struggling with his mental health. As the abuse continued, Jamal's mental health began to deteriorate. He experienced symptoms of anxiety and depression, struggling to concentrate in school, and ultimately losing interest in activities he once enjoyed. However, he kept his struggles hidden from his friends and family, fearing judgment and stigma. Jamal's reluctance to seek help was further reinforced by systematic barriers such as limited access to affordable mental health services in our community and a lack of culturally competent resources that understood his unique experiences as an African American teen. It wasn't until Jamal's mental health reached a crisis point that he finally reached out for help. With the support of a school counselor who understood the intersection of race, culture, and mental health, Jamal was able to access the resources and support he needed to heal from the trauma of teen dating violence and prioritize his mental health. And so, despite Jamal experiencing significant mental health challenges as a result of his abuse, as we can all tell right here, he was still very hesitant in speaking out. And this is all due to him feeling like he had no one to speak to that was going to be able to relate to him and understand how to proceed with him. Thankfully, as it was stated, Jamal was able to find somebody, and that is good. And like I kind of touched on a little bit earlier, now we are going to go ahead and begin talking about underreporting and what exactly does that mean? African American teens may fear, I'm so sorry. Underreporting of dating violence among African American teens is a prevalent issue with significant implications. And so I'm going to go ahead and give also a few reasons that shed light on why underreporting is so common. First, we have that African American teens may fear retaliation or reprisal from their abusive partners if they report incidents of dating violence. This fear is deeply rooted in historical experiences of systematic racism and violence. According to a study by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, Black teens are disproportionately affected by intimate partner violence, with 31.5% reporting experiencing physical violence from a dating partner. And then we have the normalization of violence. Historical oppression and violence within African American communities have contributed to the normalization of violence as a coping mechanism or survival strategy, if you'd want to say. And unfortunately, this causes teens to downplay or dismiss their experiences of dating violence, viewing it as a common occurrence rather than recognizing it as abuse that warrants intervention. And then we have the lack of access to resources. Historical disparities in access to resources and support services, such as mental health services and domestic violence shelters, have limited African American teens' ability to seek help for dating violence. And according to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, Black teens of domestic violence are less likely to seek help from police or domestic violence programs compared to their white counterparts. And then we have the perceived power dynamics. African American teens may perceive power imbalances in reporting dating violence, particularly if the perpetrator holds positions of authority or influence within their community. And this perception of power dynamics can deter them from wanting to come forward and seeking help. And these factors highlight the complex interplay of historical, cultural, and systematic influences that contribute to the underreporting of teen dating violence among our African American teens. And by being able to address this issue, it requires a comprehensive approach that acknowledges and addresses these underlying barriers to reporting and seeking help. And now that we have gone ahead and really explored the mental health effects of teen dating violence amongst our African American teens, it's important to also consider the physical health consequences. So African American teens who experience dating violence may suffer physical injuries such as bruises, cuts, and fractures. Why is this, you may ask? Well, historical and systematic factors, including media portrayals and cultural narratives, play and contribute to the normalization of violence within our communities. And this unfortunately increases the risk of physical harm in dating violences. And according to the CDC, African American teens experience physical dating violence at higher rates compared to their counterparts, with 1 to 6 reporting being hit, slapped, or physically hurt by a dating partner. Moving on to social isolation, let's explore how African American teens are impacted in this aspect. Limited access to support system and the fear of stigma and judgment within our community, unfortunately, can contribute to self-isolation experienced by African American teens who are victims. And so one thing that you will notice is that they will start to withdraw themselves from social activities and things that they once enjoyed and isolate themselves from friends and family due to the dating violence. And studies have shown African American teens experiencing dating violence are less likely to seek help or disclose the abuse compared to their partners. And then we have the nature of we have the nature of violence. So African American teens who experience, yes. So African American teens who experience dating violence may be at increased risk of perpetuating or experiencing violence in future relationships. And why is this, you may ask? Well, the exposure to violence in relationships can normalize abusive behaviors and create a cycle of violence within our African American families and youth. And so research also suggests that African American teens exposed to violence in their relationships are more likely to engage in aggressive behaviors in their adult relationships, with a 30% higher likelihood of experiencing intimate partner violence. And these factors, including historical trauma, systematic racism, media portrayals, and cultural narratives, are interconnected in shaping the normalization of violence within our African American community. And by being able to understand the historical and systematic context, we can see how these elements perpetuate harmful stereotypes, normalize violence, and contribute to a cycle of abuse within relationships. And transitioning from discussing the physical consequences of social isolation, it's essential to explore how these broader societal factors play a role in shaping attitudes and behaviors relating to teen dating violence among our African American teens. Understanding the long-term effects of teen dating violence is crucial, as it often sets the stage for re-victimization and perpetuation of violence in adulthood. According to research, a staggering 22% of adult women experience rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner during adolescence. And additionally, 15% of adult men experience some form of dating violence between the ages of 11 to 17. And this statistic underscores the importance of early intervention and prevention efforts to break the cycle of violence. And by addressing teen dating violence in general and providing support to teens who have experienced dating violence, we can work towards preventing re-victimization and promoting healthy, respectful relationships in adults. It highlights the critical need, honestly, for comprehensive strategies that address the root causes of teen dating violence and empower our young people to build relationships based on mutual respect and safety. So now we're going to go ahead and get into the critical aspect of intervention and prevention techniques, specifically tailored for our African American teens experiencing dating violence. We will explore strategies aimed at empowering and supporting these individuals within their unique cultural and social contexts. So the first one that we have here is education and awareness. So understanding healthy relationship dynamics and recognizing signs of dating violence is crucial for our teens who experience many unique challenges. And so by being able to provide comprehensive education programs, we can empower our teens to identify and address unhealthy behaviors early on. And how it helps prevent teen dating violence is by educating African American teens about healthy relationships and warning signs of dating violence. We empower them to make informed decisions, seek help when needed, and help try to break that cycle of abuse before it gets to that point. And then we have promoting healthy relationships. So promoting mutual respect, trust, and communication in relationships is essential for African American teens to navigate intersecting challenges related to race, culture, and socioeconomic factors. By fostering healthy relationship dynamics, we empower our teens to cultivate positive interactions and prevent relationship violence. And how it helps, you may ask, is by promoting healthy relationship dynamics. We can challenge harmful stereotypes and power imbalances that contribute to dating violence. By empowering our African American teens to prioritize mutual respect and communication, we can create a culture of accountability and respect that reduces the likelihood of abusive behaviors. Foster supportive relationships. The importance is building strong supportive relationships with parents, teachers, mentors, and peers provides our teens with a sense of safety, validation, and empowerment. By creating a supportive environment, we encourage our teens to seek help and support when experiencing dating violence. And the reason why this can help try to combat and prevent teen dating violence is because supportive relationships serve as a protective factor against dating violence by providing our teens with emotional support, guidance, and resources. And by fostering open communication and trust, we empower our teens to disclose abuse and access support services whenever that time is needed and they would like to come forward. Empowerment and self-esteem building. The importance of this is it empowers our African American teens to assert their boundaries, prioritize their mental health, and advocate for themselves. This helps foster resilience and agency. And by promoting self-esteem and confidence, we can equip our African American teens with the tools to recognize and resist abusive behaviors. And so how does empowerment and self-esteem help try to prevent teen dating violence? So by promoting empowerment and self-esteem building, we can empower our teens to set boundaries. Again, like I said, set boundaries, recognize red flags in relationships, and to be able to assert their rights. And by fostering a sense of agency, we can reduce the likelihood of African American teens becoming victims or perpetrators of dating violence. Okay, and then we have promoting gender equality and respect. So the importance of this is challenging traditional gender norms and stereotypes. It is very crucial for African American teens to cultivate healthy relationships. And by being able to promote gender equality and respect, we can dismantle harmful attitudes and behaviors that perpetuate dating violence. And so how this may help is by promoting gender equality and respect. We can challenge power imbalances and promote mutual respect and understanding in relationships. By fostering a culture of respect and equality, we can create a supportive environment that reduces the prevalence of abusive behaviors and teen dating violence. And so by being able to incorporate these different prevention strategies tailored for African American teens, it is very crucial for creating a supportive and empowering environment, promoting healthy relationships and reducing the incident of teen dating violence within this community is, like I've been saying this whole time, super amazing and super important to do. And so now we are going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about the early identification and intervention. So the importance of early identification and intervention is because it helps enable timely support and assistance for teens experiencing teen dating violence. It also helps try to combat and prevent the escalation of violence and harm and increases the likelihood of positive outcomes. So how this helps is by identifying and intervening early, we can provide necessary support to our African American teens, preventing further harm and promoting safety and well-being. Access to resources and support services. So access to resources and support services is crucial for addressing the immediate safety and well-being needs of our African American teens experiencing violence. It provides essential support and assistance and helps address their unique needs. By connecting African American teens to specialized and culturally competent services, we can ensure that they receive the support that they need to navigate and recover from teen dating violence. And then we have empowerment and advocacy. Empowerment and advocacy amplify the voices and choices of African American teens affected by teen dating violence. It promotes their rights and access to services while also strengthening community response and support. By empowering our African American teens to advocate for themselves and access these support services, we can help promote their autonomy and agency and just being able to have them become their own leaders and advocate for themselves. And then we have culturally relevant support. Culturally relevant support acknowledges the unique cultural experiences and needs of African American teens affected by teen dating violence. It enhances engagement and effectiveness of services while building trust and rapport with teens and their families. By providing culturally relevant support, we can ensure that services are tailored to the specific needs and experiences of these teens, increasing their engagement and participation in intervention efforts. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a few more things as well that we as advocates can do for our teens. And if you are currently working with a guest right now who is already in a violent teen dating violent relationship, the biggest thing that I could stress that we all do is safety planning, which is super crucial for Black teens experiencing dating violence. It provides them and helps them with practical strategies to navigate dangerous situations and access support. Black teens may face unique challenges related to safety, including systematic racism and barriers to accessing resources. And so by being able to tailor our safety plans to their specific needs and circumstances helps empower them to take control of their safety and well-being. And although this is a super big thing that should be shared across the board, if you especially are working with a guest who is in a violent relationship and is currently pregnant, that especially, again, like I said, safety planning, it's important for everyone across the board, but if they are pregnant and they are in a violent relationship, especially, we need to be safety planning with them. It's just been becoming so prevalent and so common. There was actually, I just saw something about a 17-year-old teenage African-American teen in South Carolina She was just about to have her baby this week and she was found murdered. And so this is why especially safety planning is so important across the board to do. And then we have our education piece. So the importance of education is because it provides comprehensive education on healthy relationships and dating violence, which is essential for our teens to equip them with the knowledge and skills to recognize warning signs, be able to set boundaries early on, and ask help when needed. Culturally relevant educational initiatives ensure that Black teens receive information that resonates with their experiences and addresses whatever that they are needing support in. And overall, like I will kind of stress, just being culturally aware. Cultivating cultural awareness and among professionals is critical to be able to effectively support our Black teens in dating violence. And so by just being able to understand their cultural backgrounds, their values, and their beliefs helps professionals build trust with Black teens. And this ultimately helps facilitate more meaningful and culturally competent interventions. And again, acknowledging and respecting cultural norms and communication styles, they do foster support and provide a inclusive environment where our Black teens will feel understood and validated. And then we have our trauma-informed care that I'm going to add on here quick. So implementing trauma-informed approaches is essential for professionals. And the main reason why is because it helps prioritize safety, trustworthiness, and empowerment, creating a supportive framework for healing and resilience. And by integrating trauma-informed principles into all of our practices, professionals can help better address the unique needs and coping mechanisms of Black teens, promoting recovery and well-being. And now each of these practical strategies is important for professionals working with Black teens and dating violence, as they can provide a holistic and culturally responsive approach to support. And by prioritizing safety planning, education, cultural awareness, and trauma-informed care, professionals can empower our Black teens to navigate dating violence, access resources, and build healthy relationships based on respect and trust. And if you know a Black teen who is in a violent relationship or is currently just in a teen dating violent relationship at all, here are some crucial steps for you that you can be able to take, and also to be able to help offer support and assistance while prioritizing our teens' safety and well-being. So the first one is just listening and validating. So create a safe and non-judgmental space for the teen to share their experiences. Listen attentively, validate their feelings, and assure them that they are not alone. Let them know that what they are experiencing is not their fault. Provide information, offer information about available resources and support services that can help the teens navigate their situation. This may also include calling your local domestic violence hotlines, shelters, or organizations, counseling services, and shelters specifically for teens if there are any in your area. And encourage them to reach out for help and assure them that support is available. And one thing too, walk them through that process too, just because, you know, with the population that we are working with, these are very vulnerable and young adults. So just if they need that support, walking them through that process, helping them make phone calls, helping them visit these different domestic violence shelters, and just be a support for them. And offer practical assistance. Offer to accompany the teen to help seek help from trusted adults such as parents, teachers, or school counselors. Assist them in making safety plans, which may include identifying safe places to go in case of emergency and creating a code word to signal distress. Empower and support. Empower the teen to make their own decisions about seeking help and ending their relationship if necessary. Offer ongoing support and encouragement throughout the process, reminding them that they deserve to be in a safe and healthy relationship. And also, if need be, reporting concerns. If you believe that the teen is in imminent danger or at risk of harm, don't hesitate to report your concerns to the appropriate authorities. Okay. So right here, I have culturally specific organizations in Colorado. Now, I'm not sure if there are any more than that. If you all know of more, feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat box. But I specifically have Kingdom Builders because, as I mentioned in the beginning, for those of you who kind of got on a little bit late, I will go ahead and reread what Kingdom Builders mission statement is because I am the youth services coordinator at our organization. And so Kingdom Builders is dedicated to changing the narrative for BIPOC individuals, men, young adults, and children in marginalized communities who have been historically impacted by domestic violence and sexual violence. So we are located in Colorado Springs. We are hoping to, fingers crossed, gets to hopefully South Carolina one day to open another satellite office. But for right now, we are in Colorado Springs and there is our phone number. Now we are in the process of rebranding. So if you call our front phone number, you will be sent to voicemail. But here is our email that we are accessing 24/7. So feel free to have anyone, if you know of anyone, email us, or if you have any questions, feel free to email us for right now until we get everything back up and running. And then I kind of did my research for these other two organizations because they're, I won't say I'm completely wrong, but I believe we are the only organization in Colorado Springs that is helping individuals in the BIPOC community. But I found these other two great resources that are located up in the Denver metro area. So we have SPAN, and they are the Safe House Progressive Alliance for Nonviolence. And right there is their phone number and their email address if you all have any questions or want to contact them. And then we have Soul to Soul Sisters, and I wasn't able to find a phone number, but that is their email address right there. So again, these are some amazing organizations that I have found who are doing great work and are continuing to help individuals in our BIPOC community. Yeah. So again, here is my email address. Feel free to contact me after this webinar if you have any questions. I did get done a little bit early, but I want to open the floor to everyone. Let's see. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they would like to share?
Hi, I would like to share. I just want to say, Gabrielle, you did an amazing job, not because you are my daughter, of course, but just hearing the journey that you told us about earlier and the information that you provided, it definitely was touching and also very enlightening because I did learn a lot. As I mentioned earlier, I do still have 8-year-old twins that I have to get to that preteen age and then adulthood. So I'm definitely learned a lot from this to be able to kind of provide that support for them with this day and age and all the things that are going on. So thank you so much for the presentation. You did an amazing job.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to share?
Hi, Gabby. This is Kathy.
Oh.
This is Kathy Holland from CICASA, and I'd like to echo what Lisa said. You did an amazing job, and I think back on when my kids were teenagers that I wish I would have had some of this knowledge that would have been very helpful because it was so hard to know what to do and what not to do, how far to intervene. And now with grandchildren, maybe I can be there for them. But the question that I have for you, what kind of role do you think schools play? I know it's hard to,
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
it's hard for kids to even go to a counselor, or I don't know what they have as counselors these days, but.
Yeah. Are you asking like how can a student, who should they go to like in the school or?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So one role and one thing that I have, because I'm a youth services coordinator, I have been trying to reach out to all of our schools in our in Colorado Springs in general. And we have been offering trainings to everyone there. Hopefully will accept it. But that's a great question. I'm not too sure on that answer, like what role that they would have. I think a lot of the help that we can give our young adults is unfortunately going to have to be like outside community agencies. So for example, we are going into our schools because we noticed a lot that the teachers were finding issues with the way that the students were behaving, the parents are finding issues. And so what we're doing is we're starting with elementary right now, but we are teaching them those preventative measures. So, healthy relationships, boundaries, and consent. So I don't know exactly like too much on like what role. If anybody has a better answer, feel free to jump in. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Lisa, again, I think that you're spot on, Gabby. The schools have so much other challenges that they have to standardize tests and things of that sort. So they just don't have the manpower to be able to provide that extra resource. So we've identified, how can we better support the community? And one was, okay, so let's look at connecting with the schools and positioning them. This is the program that we can bring in. Would you allow us to come in? And we had I think we just finished a 6-week class at an elementary school, as Gabby mentioned. We had about 54 children that were in that class for 6 weeks, and they talked about those boundaries and healthy relationships and just all of those types of skills that, children sometimes would not get if they were inside the schools, because the teachers, they just don't have the time period. So we can continue to expand. We'll see more, because education is definitely important. And if we can get them while they're in elementary school, before they get into middle and high school, I think that's where our sweet spot is going to be, as a community, educating early in the prevention measure, instead of waiting until they get to, now we're trying to interrupt or prevent, intervention type things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. And I just wanted to call attention to Jennifer's comment in the chat for you, Gabrielle. It sounds like there's going to be some connecting afterwards, and just encourage a lot of you to continue to connect with one another. And I think one of the things that I wanted to share from my perspective, and I think a lot of people in this space would also come from this, but also just like the information that you shared, Gabrielle, was so great in a sense of like challenging our advocacy, right? Understanding like what are the cultural impacts, but also sitting with some of those stereotypes. Like, what kind of biases do I have as an advocate when individuals are coming through trying to access services? And so I think the ways in which you've outlined specific information, really exciting for a lot of us to continue to sit with that, right? As you mentioned, being trauma informed really is about being anti-oppressive. And I think understanding that historical context of trauma within a specific community, I think is really important for a lot of us to understand, who do not come from that identity. And so I would just challenge and continue to encourage everyone to look back at these slides, which we will be sending out, and really sit with a lot of this. I think maybe it's the first time you've heard some of this information specific to teens, but I think just acknowledging that within your role, within your identity at your organization, and what some of these things could look like at your organization and within your programs. And so I would just say thank you so much, Gabrielle, for putting this together and sharing from your perspective and from your experience. I think a lot for us to continue to learn on our journey of being anti-oppressive and being anti-violent within the movement. And so I just really wanted to reflect on that, because I took a lot of notes, and I will be reflecting and sitting with a lot of this myself. And so just encouraging a lot of you to continue to do that. And as Gabrielle put her information in the chat, continuing to connect with their program in general. And so just if any of you would like to share your feedback, if any of you would like to share how you are feeling about this presentation, we would love to share. Kathy put it in the chat, a survey for today. So feel free to share your feedback in the chat if you'd like, but also we encourage you all to complete the survey. I don't think I'm seeing any other questions or comments, but continue to share if you would like. Again, thank you so much for your time, Gabrielle. We appreciate you so much, and Kingdom Builders overall. Is there anything else anyone would like to share before we wrap up?
Thank you, everyone. And as CR said, that we will be sending out the copies of the slides, and the evaluation is in the chat, but I'll also send that along. And this will be up on our YouTube channel probably within a few days. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Sikasa, and Gabrielle has put her information there. And thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and we appreciate Gabby and all of Kingdom Builders. So thank you very much.
Just wanted to uplift that we're getting some thank yous to you, Gabrielle, in the chat. So really amazing presentation. Thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you in our next webinar, and have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Should I stay on or am I good to go?
You are definitely good to go. Just wanted to share. Fabulous job.